Hi. Imagine that you have a chain and it's very strong and very sturdy, and that chain has one weak link. Okay. Now, what that means is that weak link, what it does, it makes the whole chain weak. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, what does a chain have to do with my transportation company? What does a chain have to do with the transportation industry? And the short answer is absolutely nothing. It has nothing to do with it, but it's a very good example on explaining how this theory of constraints, how it works, right? So theory of constraints, what it tells us is that basically there are a few constraints that actually limit the whole output of the whole system, and it creates a protocol on looking at those constraints and how to address them. Now, for you being in the transportation industry, or you might not be, but in the case you are, you might be saying, well, I have nothing to do with manufacturing. But for now, I want you to just stay with me, and hopefully by the end of this video, what you'll take out of it is that it's not difficult identifying those constraints, but what it is difficult is creating a very structured protocol on dealing with constraints, right? And hopefully this new paradigm or this new protocol, what it'll do, it'll help you. It'll help you, give you some peace of mind. It'll tell you that the sky is not falling, that all you need to do is all that you can do is just handle those constraints, basically. Because at the end of the day, that's all you can do. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about theory of constraints, or TOC. And it was introduced by Eliyahu Goldratt in his 1984 book, The Goal. And it's basically a management paradigm that views manageable systems as being limited by a very small number of constraints, right? So what is a constraint? A constraint is anything that limits the system from achieving a higher performance relative to its goal. So anything that will, if you think about it simply, let's say you have a manufacturing facility, and that manufacturing facility can produce 10,000 widgets a day. Well, then, and you have employees that can produce up to 10,000 widgets a day, and you have all the resources and all the raw materials, and you have all the demand for 10,000 widgets a day, and that's the goal that you should have, right? That is maximum output. Now, in the term, so what is a constraint? A constraint is anything that minimizes the output. In the event of that manufacturing facility, you have all the equipment that you need, but you only have half the people. Well, guess what? You're only going to manufacture half the widgets that you could potentially that there's demand for, that there's raw materials. So that would be the constraint. Now, for a transportation company, you might be thinking, well, what do I care? I'm in the transportation industry. I have nothing to do with manufacturing. But if you allow me, or if you allow the mental exercise of saying, okay, I'm in the business, or transportation companies are in the business of producing miles, right? Miles that actually are sold to the market, and that's how we produce revenue. And if you think about it, there's three very simplified components to produce those miles, right? And I need equipment, I need a driver, and I need loads. All right, so that's how we're going to think about it in relative terms to TOC, theory of constraints. Okay, so theory of constraints, it's a system, it's a systematic approach of looking at constraints. And the first approach, or the first thing to do, is to identify the constraint. The second thing to do is to exploit it. Third, subordinate. Fourth, elevate. And then the fifth, now that you have excess capacity, you go back and you revisit the whole thing, and look at where the constraint might be. Okay, so let's bring it down to, I guess, more relatable terms, right? So what would be my constraints in the transportation industry? So my constraints would be, let's say I'm looking at drivers, equipment, or loads. And you might think, well, all of those are constraints right now. All of them are, I guess, limiting our output capacity. I get you. But if you could pick one that you could say, if out of these three, if I could have one more of these units, then I could potentially increase my revenue. So if I had just one more truck, I know I have the drivers and I know I have the loads, but if I had one more truck, I know that I could run more miles. Okay, then the answer would be trucks, right? Or equipment. Now, if you say I have all the equipment that I need, I have a bunch of customers knocking at my door, so the only thing that I need is drivers. Then it's drivers. Okay, and same thing with loads, right? I mean, I have all the equipment, I have all the drivers, but I don't have any loads to move. Okay, then it's loads. It's not that difficult to identify, but what is difficult is to put in a strategic order, right? So I guess if I could change one, if I could change one of those outputs, or one of those, I guess, constraints, which one would it be? If I had my choice, well, I would start with drivers, okay? Or I would start with loads, or I would start with equipment. So now that you have identified one single constraint, and that is the key, you identified one single constraint. Now the next process would be to exploit. So let's say that drivers was a constraint. Well, what can I do to exploit drivers? And not in that way, but what can I do to exploit driver capacity? So I guess what I could do is say, I have underutilized drivers, right? So I have 10 drivers, and out of those 10 drivers, 2 of them, they're running over 11,000 miles a month. They're just cream of the crop. They're never late. They're like, their safety score is amazing. Okay, there's not much that you can do, but at least you know your maximum output is dictated by those drivers. You're gonna have the average driver, and now you can say, okay, what can I do to help this average driver run more miles? Can I create an incentive program? Can I create a program where if they run 9,000 miles, I give them a $50 gift card. If they run 10,000 miles, I give them a $100 gift card. Those same 10 drivers that I have, how can I make sure that the majority of them are closest to their maximum output? Now, I might have 3 drivers or 2 drivers that they don't even run enough to pay for the equipment. So can I implement a policy to say, okay, if you're not going to be running in 5 days, we're going to sleep seat this equipment because we need to pay this equipment, and unfortunately you're not running enough miles, right? So that would be one way to exploit the driver constraint. Now, equipment, okay. What would be another way to exploit equipment? Would be, all right, I have equipment, I have the loads, I have the drivers. All right, then I sleep sit drivers, right? So what I do is that I make sure that my equipment is moving. Let's say that that I needed trailers, and the equipment is my constraint. Then what I would do is say, okay, can I start looking at those at the equipment that has been idle for more than, I guess, 5 days, or that it's been sitting at a warehouse for 2 weeks, And can I start being cognizant of the problem and start moving that equipment, right? That would be one way to exploit the limited number of tractors or trailers or equipment that I have and squeeze as much capacity as I can out of it. Now, the third example would be loads, right? So I have all the equipment that I need. I have all the drivers that I need, but I don't have all the loads that I need, right? So at that point would be, okay, I have 10 customers. Am I making sure that I'm asking for accessorial revenue every time, right? So accessory revenue is about 1 to 1.5% of revenue for most companies. And while 1.5% might not seem like a big deal, but 1.5% of revenue is, can make the difference between you breaking even at the end of the month, or you actually having to tap into your savings to make payments, right? In that example, let's say you have 10 particular customers and you cannot get any more miles. Well, at that point, it would be, can I talk to my customers and see if the only limited number of miles that I can run, if I can run them the most efficient way, right? So I am certain that most companies have unprofitable lanes, unprofitable customers. So at that point, can I reshift these miles that are unprofitable towards profitable lanes, customers, regions? And by the way, if you need help with that, please contact me. We run lane analysis for some of our customers. All right, so what's next, right? Next thing would be elevate for this particular example. In manufacturing, the next step is subordinate, but run with me for a little bit onto why elevate would be a better next step. So elevate is grabbing resources and trying to fix the problem, right? And those resources might be personnel, might be money, might be, I guess, anything that is it's outside of the model, outside of the operational model, and we're trying to fix it by allocating money, resources, time, anything of that nature, right? So in the event of equipment, well, how do I subordinate? Well, can I buy more equipment? It's that simple, right? In the event of drivers, well, how do I get more drivers? Can I spend more money on hiring a recruiter? Can I buy leads? Can I buy better software? Can I pay somebody from the office to, make phone calls to current drivers and get referrals? That would be one example. Now, on loads, can I hire a salesperson to go get me loads? Can I visit clients, right? Can I start visiting? Can I start flying to go visit clients and try to get more business? That would be one way to elevate, right? Now, subordinate. Why did I say that subordinate is the last step? Because subordinate, what it means is that this is my maximum output. This is my constraint. And basically, I shrink my output to the level of my constraint. Basically, I shrink my company to the level of what I'm actually able to produce at that particular time. Getting rid of equipment or getting rid of drivers is not an easy task, or it's not recommended. So I would be very, I guess, cautious to do so. But for the sake of the example, all right, let's run with this, right? So let's say that equipment was your constraint and you had all the loads that you needed, and you had all the drivers that you needed. Why could you not get more equipment? It's beyond me. But assuming that you could not, then it's simple. Then you get rid of the unprofitable customers because you're not able to service all the customers, or you're underserving customers, one. So at that point, you make a choice and say, okay, these customers are not actually making me money. I'm going to reallocate them to the highest paying customers. Second, these drivers are not running what they should be running, and what it's actually doing, it's taking miles away from the drivers that I want to retain. So that's what I would do. That's in the event. Event of equipment constraint. Now, driver constraint. I have all the loads that I need. I have all the equipment that I need as well. But I don't have enough drivers. Same thing. Reallocate miles, or reallocate, to start, serving the highest grossing or highest paying customers. Get rid of the bad customers and sell equipment, right? Because you have either sell it, lease it, do something with it, because your constraint is drivers. Now, you have the third one would be you have the constraint of loads, right? Which a lot of you guys might be looking at this, might be seeing this at this time. So I have all the drivers that I need, I have the equipment that I need, but I don't have the loads. So what that means is that I have idle equipment that is not only sometimes is not producing my required rate of return, but it's actually producing a negative rate of return. It's actually costing me money, and it's not actually yielding anything for me, right? So at that point would be getting rid of equipment, selling it, leasing it, doing something with it. And same thing. I have drivers that I am not giving enough miles because I don't have enough loads. So instead of punishing all the drivers, what I think that it would be more appropriate to do is say, okay, I'm going to the drivers that are not performing, I'm going to reallocate those miles to the other drivers that want to run miles, that want to perform, and I'm going to improve, I guess, the chances of those drivers staying with me because I'm giving them miles, right? All right, so that is that's theory of constraints in a nutshell. Thank you so much for watching this. If you would be so kind to like this video, it would actually mean a lot to me. And if you need notes of the I guess video transcript of the video, please message me. My name is Luis Talavera. I am a consultant for Talavera Consulting LLC, soon to be Freight Network IQ, and we help transportation companies quickly identify potential savings, create better lane networks, and manage their fuel expense so they can start saving money and within 90 days. So anyways, thank you so much. Thank you for watching.